Hello, and welcome to another fully live episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Cody Kinsey. I'm a security researcher at Varonis, and today we have our good friend and fellow hacker, Killian, back on the show. Killian, thank you for joining us on such short notice. I didn't see your message until 5 minutes ago, so everyone, Killian is going to be blind reacting to all the news today.
Hey, we're spicing it up. It's all right. It's okay.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. So, yeah, lots to talk about today. I also sorry to hide you, chat. I'm not ashamed of you, but I do want to. Can I? Oh, you can barely see. Sorry, maybe I'll even see. There we go. Okay, do you see these cool nano leaf style lights I got going on today?
I do.
They cost me a couple of dollars to make. It was pretty cool. So I like to shout out like tools and other things and useful stuff that I found this weekend. I will say that if you have access to a 3D printer, this design is actually so cool. It's actually just a single strip of NeoPixel LEDs. It's really cheap to get online, and you can, provided you can find a continuous path. That's kind of the like geometry equation you have to solve. You can stitch them together into pretty much whatever shape you want. And if you want to be a big nerd about it, you can even create each one of these pixels as an individual like group within WLED. Which is open source and allows you to connect and control these over Wi-Fi using Home Assistant, Google Home, Apple HomeKit, or whatever they have. It's really cool. So I ended up making a short video about this that will come out fairly soon. I think we're going to put it on TikTok actually. But it's super simple to make these. They cost not very much money. It doesn't take that much printer time. And I've made some huge ones of these, which I will reveal in the TikTok video coming up. So if you're somebody that likes to hack stuff, build stuff, and has access to a 3D printer, you can get a spool of warm white filament, a strand of NeoPixels, and then a microcontroller to control it all. I'm using a Wi-Fi nugget to do this, and it creates kind of like a Batman-like effect where there's one nugget like outlined by the lights because it's like the control box. But yeah, it's pretty cool, I have to say. So if you are looking for a fun and cheap project for somebody who likes these sorts of lights, yeah, you can build one yourself. The microcontroller I'm using in this case is the Nugget, and both versions that we have work with this, but also you can just grab a cheap microcontroller like a D1 Mini or something and solder it yourself if you really want to. So yeah, that's what I've been working on this week, kind of making some Christmas presents for people who like blinky lights, and really working the fact that I have access to a 3D printer. And frankly, if you have like a low-cost printer, or if you have access to like a makerspace or a library that has one, you could really delight someone with one of these prints. And these boxes take about an hour or so to print each one. That's both the front and the back that go together. So yeah, really about an hour of investment per one of these little box elements that you want to make. So my personal recommendation for low-cost hacker holiday presents, mimic these lights that cost like $300. People generally don't know the difference. Until they try to take them apart and like, rearrange them in a different shape. Like, no, this is like glued to a foam core board. It's not going to work that way. So yeah, you kind of got to figure out what shape you want in advance. That's the only big thing about this. Aside from that, I find them to be just as impressive as the like $300, $400 version. So lot of really cool stuff. So yeah, love shouting out Thingiverse projects. And also I have dropped a couple of my own Thingiverse projects. Which yeah, I should mention. Okay. So I went ahead and made a couple of the challenges that I talked about before. I made a Hack the Pentagon challenge, which is really just like a Locksport like challenge where when I'm doing a basic lockpicking workshop, if somebody is too advanced and they solve this challenge too quickly, I can hit them with the Hack the Pentagon challenge. So the Hack the Pentagon challenge is literally just a pentagon with as many holes as you can fit like sturdy padlocks through. I found I just needed something like this because we had so many padlocks for our lockpicking challenges that I wanted something where if we've got, the best and brightest of the lockpicking class that's getting bored over here, a real challenge to toss to them. So in the future, I might want to add like maybe like 2 pieces to it so it locks, and then you have to like unlock all of them in order to get a prize inside, something like that. But for now, it's a pretty simple device. If you want it, I found it to be very useful. I put it on Thingiverse. And then, of course, we also have a remix of this original padlock. So this design is really cool because if you want to host a like a lockpicking challenge or something like that, you can put small, easy padlocks on these little lock boxes. and there's two different configurations. There's a locking plug on one side, so you have to unpick both in order to get into it, or you can also have a slider so it can go either way. So this is the version that I kind of remixed. I made it so it has 3 holes on each side. So it's basically a 1v1 where each player has to pick 3 locks in order to unlock the lock
that's
first.
awesome.
So these are, yeah.
I was gonna say, what's the hardest lock you found to pick so far? What's the like advanced one that you put on these? I'm just curious.
So some of the locks that have specifically like anti-lock picking features, like things that make it difficult to get a torque wrench inside and turn it properly, or like things that cause the pins to set and feel like you've made progress, but instead you've actually jammed the lock. You have to go back and back and back. Those sorts of locks tend to be like burly, beefy master locks, and other locks that are made to like high tolerances that tend to be a little bit bigger. I find that smaller locks like tend to not have enough space to really be very precise, and while still being low cost. So like, with miniaturization comes cost. And in order to keep things cheap, a lot of these really tiny, like really, really tiny locks, like the ones you can see my friend David here picking, these are the ones where whenever we go to love lock bridges, often they'll go and they'll cut these locks off every so often because they create weight. They're technically waste. And sometimes we'll just do lock sport meetups where we just go and pick off the excess ones that we're about to get cut off anyway, and then contribute them to these lock picking challenges. And the little ones are always the ones that come off the easiest. The larger, beefier padlocks, size is not always an indication of, like precision. For example, some of the big, like beefy, clunky ones that rattle around, those are super easy to open because the tolerances are super loose on those. And you can really get away with just kind of raking them with the lockpick. They just kind of open. But I would say the bigger, beefier locks that have security features and don't like rattle a lot when you those are the ones that are built to high tolerances. There's not a lot of room to wiggle around and trick the lock into doing something it's not supposed to do, because the secret technique to this is you can just take like a Coke can, rip it, and very carefully use that piece of aluminum to put down in the shackle, and it just opens for a lot of these padlocks. So if anybody gets mad enough at one of these lockpick challenges we set up, there's always a way for most locks to be able to just defeat it that way, which is what we have been kind of teaching with that. But for these high precision locks, there's not enough space because they're cut to a very, very precise width and stuff. So you can't fit anything down there. That's where I would say like our most challenging locks, but let me go back to the ones here. Of these, this really beefy master lock shackle is quite a challenge to open. This is a transparent training one that we do for as like babies first locks, so you can see what's happening on the inside. And then some of these other ones that have like the bigger, like beefier shackles, because they're bigger and it's less expensive to be precise on that scale, those are the ones that tend to lock better together and be harder to pick. So sometimes like size really is an indication, but it's more of like an economics thing of how expensive it is to make it precise that these locking techniques don't work. But we had a lot of fun doing this in Missoula. A lot of places like to do lock picking like workshops, because frankly, you should know your own locks. Like if you have really terrible locks on your home or your apartment or something, like it's kind of worth knowing, and without being able to self-check, like but also I lose my keys a lot, so this is a really good skill to have. And I personally fly all over the place, and I have a set of lockpicks just like with me most of the time. I've literally never had an issue with it, but I am very careful about which states I go to, because in some different states, like lockpicks are considered to either be illegal or burglary tools. Most of the states that I visit do not see it that way, so I kind of forget about it, because like we go to Las Vegas for DEF CON and they sell them there and like whatever. But please be careful. What's legal where I live, and most things are legal where I live, is not necessarily legal everywhere. So yes, I think that like me advocating taking locks off love lock bridges is a little controversial, but frankly, again, a lot of people find that they just get cut off anyway, and giving them extra life in some of these fun and delightful workshops, I like to think that their love goes on, and frankly, like if you cheaped out on your lock in the first place, and you didn't, it just goes to show you're building on a rocky foundation. So
it's recycling, Cody. You're doing something good for the environment, and I think we can all agree that's a good thing.
Thank you. I appreciate that defense. I think I'll use it myself. So I don't know if any of you have been on TikTok like me and seen a lot of these AI generated memes that have come up, but I've tried my hand at creating some of my own Gen Alpha memes. DALL-E has become, if you have ChatGPT Plus, effectively free, and you can run a lot of prompts per day. So for your consideration, I present this AI generated meme called "Of Course the Horse," and I beta tested this on a couple Gen Alpha kids, and they loved it. So I don't know, the AI might have figured it out, but yeah. This is, of course, the horse. So obviously, image generation has become a lot cheaper. And you can find a lot of examples of this being used in just social media in general. And it's interesting to me to see the trickle down of these image generation tools being maybe 30% of my meme feed is people pushing, ChatGPT to make a character and then accentuate these details about them until it like no longer makes sense. Interesting. It's starting to creep into popular culture where regular people are starting to be delighted by some of the far reaches of these things that used to just be things I would send to my friends. So yeah, we're continuing to see these AI generated pieces of culture be spread and become more and more mainstream. So you can look forward to more AI generated memes like this one. I don't know what it means. It's a mystery. That's the point. And I think that for some people, the mystery or the nonsense is the thing that really delights them. Because a lot of the memes are nonsense to begin with, or at least a lot of them are. So I don't know. I've just been really interested to see how image generation tools and image generation memes are now part of like mainstream culture. So look forward to more of those. Also, just want to shout out this video again. It's doing really well. It's got over 2,000 views of the Hackaday SuperCon. I was really happy with how this video did and how it came out. And we're going to hopefully be making a similar video at the C3 conference coming up. So look forward to that. And then also one more little update. So Killian, I think you missed this one, but there was a new attack, I would say, against Apple devices called Sour Apple. So Sour Apple uses one of my favorite little devices. And I went off on how much I love the S3 Mini last time, how it has Bluetooth. And I'm holding one in my hand right now. And I soldered a LiPo battery board on the back of it. And now I can just plug in, well, I have like a little like expired like vape battery here I salvaged, plug it into the back, and boom. Now every iOS device around me is going to be getting nonstop Bluetooth pairing notifications. And this thing works through the floor. I turned it on in my room yesterday, and our friend who was working downstairs in the studio could not use her iPhone, which was exactly what I intended. I was like, get back to work. We spent the better amount of yesterday testing this out, how it worked, and I have some information about it. So currently, this no longer crashes iPhones, but it used to. So an update came out that fixed this, that updated this in iOS that causes it to no longer crash. However, it was reported to make an iPhone unusable because there is no way to disable this. You can turn off your Bluetooth. You can turn off, you can put yourself in airplane mode. Bluetooth Low Energy is apparently always on, and there's nothing you can do about these pop-ups, or at least we were not able to find something. So if you're in the chat and you have an idea for how we can get these notifications to stop popping up on an iOS device, we really got creative yesterday with like trying everything we could to stop the onslaught. But by taking this thing, putting it in my pocket, and then walking into a coffee shop, I would basically make any iOS device unusable to the person who was trying to use it. So imagine that the coffee shop is using an iPad as their payment gateway. I have now just committed a denial of service attack against the business. And it doesn't need to be a blue screen in order to actually, disable a business. So this attack is viable, and it's very, very cheap. And while it is fairly easy to track down, because most of the people running this attack are using a flipper, I tested out this cheapo version, and frankly, it does what it advertises itself to do. So this pairing notification thing is super, super annoying, and I do not recommend that anybody does it in an uncontrolled space. As I mentioned, the default range on this is tremendous. So if you're trying this out in like an apartment, you are definitely going to be affecting all of your neighbors with iOS devices. So please be reasonable with this, because as you can see, this used to be capable of crashing iOS devices. It's now uncertain whether that will work against maybe older iOS devices still. However, it no longer causes crashing, at least in the more modern iPhones that we were testing yesterday. So little report on Sour Apple. and the current state of the attack, still annoying and still definitely able to ruin someone's experience or make it difficult for someone to like pay at a restaurant. On either side, like if it was an iPhone trying to like tap on like a tablet, like that's also an Apple product, like that would create a denial of service attack where it probably wouldn't be able to run the transaction anymore. So kind of specific. It's not like the biggest deal, but still kind of interesting to me that this is out there still working. And in order to maintain this convenience feature, Apple has decided people are, hey, wait a minute, that's my nugget. What? Did I not watch this all the way through?
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
While you're looking at that, James had a good comment. He said Apple uses Bluetooth for tracking. Yeah, I wonder if the fact that you can't ever actually disable it is for their AirTags.
Oh, you're probably correct. Wait, I'm sorry, I'm stunned. I'm stunned that this tool that okay, that's really cool. Yeah, so we've been making a bunch of stuff based on the Wi-Fi nugget. Like I said, we released a limited amount of prototypes that use the ESP32 S3. So it's so funny to me at the end of this video that I've watched twice and apparently never got to the end of. Okay. Well, that's so cool. Thank you for posting that. That's
nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. No, I don't want to leave YouTube. I don't trust it anymore. But anyway, so this is the GitHub repo. I have to say, I'm a huge fan of this project. I think it's really cool. And not just because they have excellent choice in microcontroller form factor, also because, this actually works and it works quite well. So if you see these pop-ups happening on your device, look for a smug person holding a Flipper Zero and tell them to knock it off, because at this point, everybody knows what's up. It is no longer a mystery about what's going on. So I also earlier this week released a couple of videos on the internet. One of them is on TikTok, and it's talking about how to find suspicious Wi-Fi networks with the Wi-Fi Nugget. You can check it out there. It's got 308 likes. I think it's got like 5,000 views, something like that. So I'm pretty happy with that one. And then also our friend Angelina, no, stop talking. Our friend Angelina also released a new video. This video was covering airplane hacking, and I will pull it up in a second when I find out where I am.
A couple people in the chat while you're looking for that have mentioned that it could have some the Bluetooth Low Energy spam can have unintended consequences like disrupting insulin or glucose devices. So super please don't do that, I guess is the takeaway. If you could affect someone's health, like that's gone beyond annoying, like that's dangerous. So please be responsible.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me hold on. Nobody needs to see my playlist. I'm going to go ahead and pull up Angelina's video before I forget it. But yeah, Angelina and I worked on this video a while ago, actually. So if you're watching us on the Reddit channel, then that's the channel that we released this on. Here we go. All right. So this video is covering the threat of ADSB spoofing. So ADSB spoofing, I think I have this on double speed. Otherwise, she's really going off. But ADSB spoofing means hackers are able to potentially create fake aircraft in the sky, at least in terms of the way that other aircraft are able to perceive it, which creates confusion and potentially danger. So in order to spot these things, Angelina created a system that looks for suspicious characteristics of ADSB broadcasts that could indicate spoofing, a lot of the obvious stuff, but also some interesting analysis to try to identify patterns that don't make sense. So this is an overview of how that works. And also, she actually goes up in the air. She flies in this because she is a pilot. So a lot of this is not just a curiosity. It's her own, self-interest here. Like she wants to be able to have the data to make these decisions while she's flying. So yeah, there's actually footage of her taking this device that she built up in the air and operating it and gathering data while she's flying over Los Angeles. So this was so incredibly cool. I was really happy to help her produce this piece. Awesome. So check it out. It is one of my favorite pieces we've put out recently. And like I said, it took like a year for us to finish this, but ultimately absolutely worth it in the long run. So yeah, always love seeing Angelina's work out there. She is an incredible hacker and again, a pilot, which is an interesting combination that has lended her to do a lot of really cool projects around aerospace cybersecurity.
That's wild. I mean, that really is crazy. My only comment, aside from just being absolutely super impressed, is she needs more stickers. I mean, Cody, compare your laptop to hers.
Hey, she's just getting started, and I think, you know, hackers, as they build their world, they fill their laptop with, like, you know, allies and friends and
Mm-hmm.
businesses that they think are doing a good job, and they make a statement with that sort of thing. So, you know, I think that the fact that she is sparse with her endorsements is, you know, she
It
understands
says a
that
lot.
laptop someday, that laptop is going to be a billboard. People will pay top dollar to rent out.
Absolutely.
All right, so let's go over to the news. I think I'm done. Oh, actually, there was one last thing I wanted to share. This was crazy. So I got this on TikTok the other day. I downloaded it and re-uploaded it to Mastodon because I thought it was so funny. This is AI. You can't hear my audio, but this is AI generated audio over like a generated video. So they took an excerpt of a real interview, and then they started manipulating the mouth to meet this crypto scam. But to hide it, they threw over this overlay because right now it's doing a terrible job and it looks really, really bad. So in order to obfuscate how bad the AI tools for the scam were, they actually did all this stuff to try to cover the parts of it that said the part about crypto and also were just synced very, very poorly. So this is real. Like I've gotten hit with 3 or 4 kind of like lazy, low-level attempts of like AI generated deepfakes. This is just the beginning. You can expect these sorts of phishing campaigns to really escalate. So if it's already kicking off now, you can expect regular people to start getting hit with more sophisticated versions of this in the coming months and definitely the next year. So it's time. We're here. We finally have AI generated attacks that can be deployed at scale. And while they don't look great, you know, it probably won't matter anymore. So that's the future. We live in it.
Yeah, I mean, most people won't be focusing on it like someone like you or I or our audience will be, like watching for those signs. You know, grandma or whoever, grandpa, you know, they're gonna get it. And man, let's go back to the days where we didn't have this.
All right. So on to our news. So at the top of the hour, we've got I was reading Bleeping Computer and I saw Varonis in the top headline. And I was like, oh no. And then I was like, I read the headline. I was like, oh, okay, good. So not only is this a sponsored piece, which means like, okay, like it's not like them reporting that something terrible happened. Because like anytime you see your business's name as the first part of like a news headline, it's either really good or really bad. And the uncertainty is, you never know.
Yeah, it's a little
yeah, so like I was pleased to see that this was a product announcement, and the product is actually really interesting here. So I don't talk a lot about like Varonis like product stuff because like most of the time it applies to like a very small subset of most of you. Although it's funny that a lot of our audience has like come up to me and be like, oh yeah, we work with Varonis all the time. Like I was at that hackerspace I was at. I was like, and somebody who came in who worked for the LA Department of whatever was just like, oh, we love you guys. Yeah, like it comes up all the time, but a lot of people don't know what Varonis does. And when they add new features, it might not always, make sense based on that lack of knowledge. But what is cool about this is it's an AI tool that allows people who are using Varonis, which is supposed to help you safeguard data and track down security incidents, as well as be able to understand like visibility into files and who accessed it and what their permissions are. That is a little confusing sometimes and requires specific knowledge of what a threat looks like or what suspicious behavior looks like. And we do our best to be able to educate people on that, but sometimes being able to help them ask those questions or provide immediate results without needing to know, how to run that query would be helpful, right? Like that's kind of the thing behind a lot of these AI tools. Well, Varonis is, as far as I know, one of the first companies that is beginning to make it really easy to find, I would say, more complex security incidents or suspicious behaviors from the perspective of like I don't know, like an executive that like wants to know generally who accessed this file or who had access to it, or if anybody did something that's an indicator of compromise, something like that. So yeah, like I think being one of the people that uses these sorts of AI tools, the ability to do research is one of the things that I continually use like OpenAI tools for. So extending that into doing research into your own internal or threat environment, like that kind of makes sense to me. So Just was pleased, first of all, to see the like news around some of these like bleeding edge tools come out in a company I work for. That's really cool. And then second, because I use AI tools for this purpose myself already, like doing more research, analyzing data, seeing this applied to something that makes a lot of sense and can be confusing to some people, like that's really cool. Killian, do you have anything? You probably know a bit more about this whole project than I do as well.
I have been working with this for a little while now, even before it was announced, and I am so pumped by this for a couple reasons. One, I will toot my horn just a little bit. I would say that like maybe an expert level on building the queries to to run the searches, to find the events that happened, to find the access and permissions, things like that. And having this has even made my life so much easier because I know the query that I want to build. I can simply type it in and it gets me like 90% of the way there, 95% of the way there. And then maybe I just got to tweak a couple things based on my preferences. But it's so cool to be able to kind of cut a lot of that down. So it really reduces, in many ways, the time to response if I'm looking for something. And in the investigation part, the part you were just showing there, it's really cool because you have the alert, it has all the details together there for you, but you can start to kind of query it and go a little bit further. Oh, here's the part where we're asking around the events and exposure. Like, this is cool. And when doing an alert investigation, you can of course ask it about parts of the alert. Hey, tell me a little bit more about what's going on. Can you summarize it? Can you tell me like suggested corrective actions? But you can also ask it more general like knowledge questions too. In this part, like right here, like how would I create a PowerShell script to do something? And it'll help build that for you. So it really kind of centralizes a lot of the investigation, which is cool, and allows you to stay within the platform and the investigation to get additional information. So you don't have to stop, leave the interface, go do something else, come back in here. It's really awesome. And it makes really, even like I said, I'm an expert and it helps me a lot. And it can take, a junior level guy or somebody just getting into security, a guy or gal, I suppose. And give them the tools to be really effective very quickly.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it's like, let's say you get like a suspicious login or like something that like confuses and concerns me. I don't need to go call someone who knows more about that incident. I can be like, hey, what's the playbook for this? Give me the details and what's your assessment? Is this a big deal? Do I need to go call someone, or is this like a relative? And like, how do I remediate this? A lot of the natural language queries that lead to like the automation of complex actions, a lot of that, like you said, reduces response time and makes it so that a normal person or somebody with maybe like a more like specific skill set would be able to operate these tools and respond or escalate when needed, as opposed to having that super expensive person on staff all the time who can respond to everything but is idle most of the time. It's cool. It's really interesting to see like how this allows me, for example, if I were to deploy something like this on my own, I don't know, like emails and stuff like that, being able to just ask it like, whoa, what was that? Like, what does this login mean? Like how many other of my logins are the same or could be compromised with this? Like, yeah, it seems cool. So anyway, I've talked about AI a lot, and I love being able to show examples of how real companies are applying this towards security. And one of the comments was generative AI is crazy cool in security and medicine. Right, absolutely. There are, of course, some caveats here. Veronis does mention, of course, you need to have somebody in the loop that helps you identify if something doesn't make sense. I mean, this is something that is new. It's bleeding edge. So while it's going to be a tool to help out in the beginning, of course, you should have somebody who is experienced with this to be able to tell, does this make sense for this specific use case? Because there's a lot of privacy and safeguards here built in to avoid, for example, training this thing on like proprietary data that they can come back and get in trouble. Like privacy is a huge thing in these tools. And I noticed in the announcement, there's a lot of nuance that's addressing concerns that anybody's going to have about, okay, if I'm running these queries, or okay, if this data is being organized, who has access to it? And is anybody else able to potentially extract it from this AI model that might be scraping it? Well, in this case, it explicitly says that they're not scraping that data to training. But that's something you should pay attention to. Because, for example, your queries in OpenAI are not the same. So if you're using like ChatGPT Plus, those queries are used to improve the model. Whereas like when you have this by a security vendor who's going to be using it in all sorts of places, that means that they need to have a higher kind of level of commitment to privacy than something that's kind of just for the public would be. So really interesting to see these roll out in a variety of different companies, and seeing it happen at my own company, super cool. So shout out to Varonis, our sponsor, for putting out some really cool tech this week. And would love to hear some feedback on that, because this is, again, one of the first times I've seen a really useful generative AI tool applied for security rolled out from a major vendor. So we'll see how it goes.
No, I'm really pumped about this. Z-Burger Kang wants to know, where do we think is the better place in the world to work in a higher IT field beside the US? Listen, if you're offering me a job in like Switzerland or Japan, sign me up. But
the happiest IT people I've ever met lived in Norway.
I believe it.
Which probably not a big surprise. They seemed a little cold, but very happy.
I'll take that deal. That's a pretty good trade.
All right. Let's see. So let's go through some data breaches. So we have the Oceania division of Nissan investigating a cyber attack and potential data breach. We've seen a lot of the same kind of playbook of these ransomware / double exploitation gangs, where if they can't ransomware stuff, they will just try to do an exploitation attack.
Right.
Nissan is saying the risk from customer data being compromised is significant, so they're warning against potential scams as this information might have been leaked. So I don't believe that there was attribution yet, but we do have some groups getting nailed this week, so there could be a little bit of correlation there.
Yeah.
Moving on. This one is a bit of a concern. So Sierra and Airlink, I believe is the other brand, routers are typically used in critical infrastructure and like mission critical systems. So these are like higher end, supposedly very robust routers that are going to be used in places where it's critical that they work and that they are hardened. 21 newly discovered vulnerabilities affect these devices, and some of them are really critical. And also it appears that some of them are not going to be fixed. So these collection, this is a 9.6 severity. These allow remote code execution in these devices that are often enabling like guest networks or other less secure forms of authentication for, like guests or whatever other sorts of reasons you would have for having a low security network. Even offering a low security network and having access to the router via that is enough for an attacker to attack many of these devices. So the severity of most of these is quite high. And while patches have come out for a number of them, I believe that there is one that is abandonware. And that in particular is a concern. So, all right, so we have, let's see how confusing this graph is. So we have our attacker. They exploit a local guest Wi-Fi connection and get access to this IoT router. That gives them access to medical devices, doctor workstations, and everything connected to this IoT station. Another example I saw was vehicle tracking. So some of these systems are used for like license plate scanners, or they're used for connected police cars that will connect back over like an IoT connection or like a cellular connection. So this could potentially affect things like servers, industrial assets, PLCs, engineering workstations. There's a variety of different attackers that Carmen Sandiego here has launched in our scenario. I'm pretty shocked to see like how many of these vulnerable devices that do not have patches applied are online. The non-patched here represents 63% of all connected devices as found in Shodan. So you can see the majority of these devices are in the United States. Again, they are critical infrastructure style devices. So that's going to be cop cars, like water supplies, like industrial controllers. These are things that are deemed to be high importance. So these, this is not good news. It appears that a lot of these have not been updated in quite some time. Even though patches are available for them, the majority of these, 63%, would be susceptible to attack using these means, which means that CISA has its work cut out for it.
Yeah, I'm not entirely surprised knowing some of the stuff I know about critical infrastructure. There's often a lot of concern about patching that it will disrupt like the certification process you have to go through depending on what it is, but it's paperwork. You got to do it, please.
Yeah, it's this sort of thing where there's a known vulnerability that's been out there
Right.
for a long time and nobody's really hit it hard yet. Like that's kind of the perfect storm for
Yeah.
a lot of these like widespread hacking attacks that use a botnet or something else to scale an attack against one instead of going after the majority of these 63%.
And I don't know if you're going to cover it because I think it came out this week. Maybe you will, but some of the water supply in Pennsylvania that were, you might have it up here already because I was just thinking about that in relation to this.
I think I do have. I think I have it somewhere.
Yeah.
I think that it was like. Actually, I might have covered it last week.
Okay. Yeah, because I know
I remember talking about it though.
It's an ongoing thing that I've been following.
All right. So going to the next, we have another victim from the same cybersecurity adversary that claimed the Las Vegas casino hacks a couple months ago. They are having their data leaked online, and this is a managed service provider that has acknowledged that they've had a cybersecurity incident and that they have enlisted cybersecurity experts that are working to resolve it. Not a lot of other information here other than a claim for responsibility. This group, Black Hat, is really getting a lot of heat. They have done a number of extremely profile attacks fairly recently, and as a result, they are getting more and more law enforcement attention.
Well, isn't oh, there it is. It was right there. I was about to say this is not the first time they've had this brush. When they were believed to be dark side in the past, they had to disband and reform, but they are back at it seemingly again.
Yeah, we see a lot of these rebrands where they'll abandon their infrastructure. They'll basically start from scratch. Maybe they'll have a different affiliate structure and they'll learn from their mistakes. But this is generally the same core group of individuals or the same core group of talent that's like spinning up these business enterprises over and over again. And they've been pretty profitable. So you'll see in our news this week a lot of strikes by the federal government against these groups, targeting their infrastructure and targeting the ways that they move their money. All right, next up, we have, this is, strap in, you guys. Something terrible has happened. Multiple NFT collections have been put at risk by flaws in an open source library that governs smart contracts. If you have a vulnerable contract, you need to lock it immediately, or your precious NFTs could lose all of their value. It's really all the snark I have to say about this.
Security eggs.
Yeah, it's my feelings on NFTs are well documented. However, Third Web was announcing the smart contracts were vulnerable. There were updates available for this, and there's some sort of amnesty chain that's allowed to be applied in order. Oh, sorry, a retroactive gas grant. Yes, of course.
Okay.
But anyway, they would offer retroactive gas grants. Congratulations, to cover contract mitigations. But you have to fill out a form to be approved. So if you're affected by this terrible, terrible NFT vulnerability, you need to lock down your precious NFTs immediately because your contracts are vulnerable. So sorry for you. All right. So a bit of good news. Kali Linux 2023.4 is released. This is the 4th release this year and possibly the last. I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But this has a number of improvements. Tax 2, I keep seeing this over and over and over. Do you know what this is? I feel ignorant, but I haven't actually used it.
I don't. I have seen it, but no, I have not used it. Is it Tax 2 or Taxi?
I don't Taxi chat. What is this? Taxi 22? Tax 22? I don't know. Somebody tell me what this is. But aside from that, there's a number of different things that I have made Nullbyte articles about that have been added. So hate mail. I remember this one. That's how I found my mom's password. It was a swear word. I called her about it. So this is a compilation of a bunch of different data breaches that allows you to search for specific email addresses and get a past history of what their passwords have been based on combined and refined breach data. So I covered this like 5 years ago. So seeing it included in Kali Linux now is stunning. I guess somebody really cleaned it up because it used to take up like 20 gigabytes of my old laptop. And it was like fun like once, but aside from demonstrating it, it wasn't super useful. But still very cool. And if you want to find someone's old passwords, then it is something where you can be like, hey, do you remember your password in high school? It was this. It's got a lot of data. That's why it's so huge. So hopefully they refined it a little bit. You got a cool mom. My mom is pretty cool. Yeah, like I had to tell her that like FU was like not a strong enough password to like, and while it did let hackers know her general attitude toward them trying to break into her computer or whatnot, she needed to change her Yahoo account email password. Anyway, so we also have Havoc, which is a post-exploitation command and control framework. We got more Tax2/Taxi stuff, Pass Detective. This is scanning the shell command history to detect mistakenly written passwords. Have you ever typed in your password accidentally and then been like, oh, that was weird?
Yeah.
If you forgot to delete it out of your log, then your shell command history might have recorded that accidentally typed password, meaning attackers would have access to it. I love like raccoon style attacks that just dig in the trash for, you know, for like interesting tidbits. So Raven, lightweight HTTP file upload service. Recon Spider, this is cool. So this is a, I don't know if it's the most advanced, but it is an open source intelligence framework that allows you to do all sorts of reconnaissance on online infrastructure. So very, very useful, very cool. It's cool to see some Sigma tools, semi-automatic OSINT framework and package manager. I haven't seen this one. If it's included now, I'm going to try this. So in addition, we've got GNOME 45. That's cool. And then also the ability to run this on the Raspberry Pi 5, which, hey, spark fun. Speaking of, where's my Pi 5? At some point, me and one of my friends are going to get a Raspberry Pi 5 from when they did the initial announcement. I reserved 2 of them, but it's taking forever. So if you also bought a Raspberry Pi 5 and haven't received one yet, let me know so I don't feel so alone. But there is a version of Kali Linux that's now been developed for the Raspberry Pi 5. So if you manage to get one, for which I'm very jealous, you can immediately run this new version of Kali Linux on it. So that's probably what, you know, let's be honest, that's what I'm going to end up using this Raspberry Pi 5 for anyway. I'm not going to be using it to control printers. I've got plenty of Raspberry Pi 4s for that. So yeah, I'm excited to see what kind of mobile hacking station I can make with the new Raspberry Pi 5.
The most interesting thing, at least for me, is the fact that we can now deploy it here in the marketplace on AWS and Microsoft. I appreciate that.
Woo! Okay, it's not just me. There's 2 other people in our chat that are also waiting on the exact same vendor for the exact same device. So yeah, we're all waiting. Spark fun. But you know, they were pretty transparent that they had no idea when they were going to get more of them. So what are you going to do? But yeah. All right. So next up, we have hackers are breaching U.S. government agencies using Adobe Cold Fusion. I've seen a lot of Adobe Cold Fusion, like gallows humor from people that do incident response. Is really the only way I can say it. Is just it seems like this has been causing some trauma for people doing IR, especially for federal agencies or important agencies, because this has been actively exploited. It has been, the CISA had reported that it has been exploited twice and kind of published some of the details in a notice talking about how Microsoft Defender for Endpoint managed to find the exploit, and it appeared to be mostly reconnaissance. There was no like ransomware or anything being run, but it looked as though a threat actor was probing around, doing their initial recon in preparation for either selling to a ransomware gang as an initial access broker, or for further like reconnaissance if it was from like a state actor looking to do espionage. So increasing headache for CISA trying to get this patched. It seems as though this is under active attack, and they are now making it an absolute priority for federal agencies and anyone else really to patch this before it's further exploited.
I've seen this a bunch too. I've seen it in the headlines. I've never actually used Cold Fusion. I'm not actually sure what it's used for, to be completely honest. It's not something I've run into.
I know. It seems to be very important, though.
Yeah.
Because a lot of very important agencies were running it, and it seems like this is a beachhead that initial access brokers are now using to manage to get into the perimeters of some of these important agencies. And me neither. Yeah, I have no idea. Somebody in the chat, tell me what is that for? But also, I'm so happy that I now have a support group for us not having Raspberry Pis. You guys are great.
Real quick, a search. I'm still old and I used Google, it told me, but it's a commercial rapid web application development computing platform. So there you go.
Okay.
That actually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So BlackBerry security flagging a new aerospace targeted attack. I didn't, sometimes you just don't know what people are into, but yeah. This was reported by BlackBerry, and it unfolded in 2 different phases targeting the aerospace sector. It was a spear phishing campaign that was generally kind of what you would expect, like looking like it was designed to steal files or conduct espionage, probably industrial espionage. They have no idea who did it. And this is a pretty simple and straightforward attack diagram. I don't think it qualifies for our most confusing diagram of the week, unfortunately. But yeah, just interesting to note that the aerospace industry is constantly under attack by espionage groups. This appears to be one of them, and they covered their tracks well enough that they got caught, but they did not get attributed. So we still don't know exactly who this is. Next up, a outage of the Black Hat / Aleph ransomware group, and the rumors are that this is caused by law enforcement. Can I just say, of all the ways that generative AI has contributed, the fact that I don't get the same stock image on every bleeping computer article is by far what affects me the most on a daily basis. I love this. Thank you. I think they've been using Midjourney for a while now, and I can't tell them how pleased I am with the results. Anyway, so the infrastructure used by this ransomware group has been out now for the last 30 hours as of this reporting. That means their infrastructure used to negotiate with victims has been compromised, or at least appears to have been disrupted. Attribution currently seems to be from law enforcement, and this would not be the first time that this playbook has been followed. In a previous iteration, this gang had their infrastructure infiltrated, and the FBI was able to recover keys for some of the ransomware victims and distribute them. So that style of attack against this group is devastating. It robs them of their livelihood. They're able to roll back the encryption on many of the victims if it's successfully executed. So it looks like this group might finally have attracted enough attention to get a substantial law enforcement presence. And I don't know, man. Once you do enough stuff that the FBI calls the NSA and they're like, we've got $10 million of budget sitting here. You want to just get these guys?
Right.
I feel like at that point, you're going to have issues operating as a group, because if you have access to some of the best talent in the world to go on the dark web and figure out how to dismantle these people's infrastructure, using tricky stuff they haven't thought of yet, I feel like we've got the people to do that. So yeah, once you rack up a big enough score, I think Grand Theft Auto just came out.
Right.
So once you get enough stars, then you're going to get the NSA involved and things are going to get tricky. I'm not saying that's what happened, but when you see an entire very notorious group's infrastructure go down after they've operated with impunity for a good amount of time, you kind of have to wonder whether or not they got the attention of a more substantial task force. All right. So this is just a report on insider attacks, and it's talking about some of the breakdown of insider attacks, how they went down, what types of techniques were used, and it's talking about how in 50% privilege escalation, or just 50% privilege escalation, but then also vulnerable tools that were downloaded allowed for these attacks to happen. So kind of 2 different things. One of them being the employee himself or herself is attempting to expand their access and go beyond what they're allowed to in order to get access to data. And the second being just using tools that are inherently risky and giving others an opportunity to strike from within the company.
I would almost, I haven't read this whole thing just based on the timing right today. I would almost say that while the insider is using something to elevate their privileges, I have it on good authority, and I've seen it so many times, that folks just have way more access, and most of the time don't need to elevate their rights. They just have access to stuff that they really shouldn't. And that's a bigger risk, I would argue, not having strong access controls. And I'm biased because it's what I talk about all the time, that not that this isn't important, but it's almost moot in many cases.
Yeah. It's when you have anybody having access to everything.
Right.
These sorts of things like are pretty easy to do, and you see this
Right.
across all sorts of organizations. I won't talk about any specific companies I've worked for, but some very large companies I've worked for have absolutely exposed confidential information to the entire company just because they never pay attention to their policies, and that's
Right.
That's how it works.
It happens often, all the time, and it's accident or it could happen for any number of reasons. Simple misconfiguration could spell disaster.
All right, next up. So Amazon is getting heated about a fraud gang. So we see all sorts of different like cyber criminal or techno criminal style like business empires. And this one was interesting to me. I hadn't really heard of this one before. So this wreck fraud gang was basically exploiting Amazon in order to issue fraudulent returns in exchange for a fee. So they use their access and influence over people that work at Amazon or have access to Amazon's system to, and then also social engineers who know the system and know how to work it, to be able to have people buy an item, give them a percentage, like 30% of the value of the item, and then get a fraudulent return approved in which they never send that item back.
Oh, okay.
So because of the way that this group figured out how to manipulate the system, they were able to give people effectively an 80% discount on any item they wanted. So for large ticket items, it made sense for you to go to this sketchy group where you only paid them after getting the results.
Right.
So this was a pretty sophisticated group. And because what they did was it was criminal, but also it was like just fraud on a massive scale. Right. Amazon is going after them legally for anything that they can't kind of lump into a criminal case. Yeah. So this is, again, like one of those criminal enterprises that like I was not aware of was so profitable or existed, but like living off the backs of one of these massive systems like Amazon and figuring out how to trick it into giving refunds was a whole business empire here. And it looks like it was able to be the main source of income for a good amount of these people that were involved in this group.
That's wild. I wasn't aware of this either, to be honest. That's crazy.
Yeah, they had a Telegram channel. They were promoting themselves on social media. And of course, Amazon also has an army of like enforcement people that are trying to catch this and find them. But yeah, they have been disruption of organizations responsible for millions of dollars in fraud. And now they're going after them legally to try to recoup some of that. But Amazon apparently spent $1.6 billion employing investigators tasked with scrutinized activities manually to deter. So like that's an army. They literally have an army of anti-fraud people. So
that's crazy.
Of all the groups I've heard of this week so far, this is the one I feel the least like the least knowledge. Because like, okay, like obviously they were committing fraud, that's bad, but Amazon literally spent over $1 billion to catch them. So clearly they had the money. Anyway, don't condone theft, but
sure.
All right, so next up we have this is called the 5 Ghoul attack, and this is affecting 5G devices. And this is a lot of them. These attacks are really interesting. They're novel, and they involve denial of service attacks and downgrade attacks against 5G connections. So a lot of phones, a lot of modems will use 5G connections now whenever available, and they generally have pretty good security, and it makes it harder for hackers to attack them. So a good way to do that is to use our runner-up for, maybe this could be our most confusing graph. We don't really have a lot this week. This one's a little bit confusing, but basically what this attack allows you to do is pretend to be a rogue 5G base station and send malformed types of information that causes all sorts of confusion to 5G devices. So that could be a laptop, a CPU router, or a smartphone. So these are mobile devices that are connecting to a 5G connection. The problem here is you can either disable the connection completely using this setup here, or you can downgrade it to a more vulnerable version of the connection to like LTE or 4G, which will allow hackers to use other techniques that are more effective against that lower level of security. So downgrade and denial of service attacks are a big concern because obviously if you can do a denial of service attack and cause the router to crash over and over and over, that's a pretty big deal. Yeah. So these are also used in some of the similar applications I was talking about earlier when we were talking about the vulnerable Sierra routers. police cars and like other things will use these sorts of 5G modems to connect back to a base station and run things like license plate scanners where bidirectional data is important. So yeah, these sorts of attacks, if they are used to do a denial of service, could be a big deal. Of course, you need to be in wireless range to deploy these attacks, so they are not remote attacks. However, if you are able to be in direct contact with one of these devices, so it connects to your rogue base station, presumably the range would still be like a mile, couple of miles, and you would be able to run these attacks, which would disable these sorts of devices. So this particular CVE is also concerning because it forces a disconnect from the 5G network and a fallback to the 4G network. So this is what I'm talking about with the potential vulnerabilities run in the 4G domain that wouldn't otherwise be possible. So yeah, a lot of different devices are affected. I am dismayed to know that my Pixel is affected. There's a lot of different devices included that use these affected chips. Google, I mean, all these manufacturers are included. So yeah, pretty interesting to see some of the 5G vulnerabilities rolling out that have such clear applications for denial of service and downgrade attacks. Qualcomm, MediaTek releasing bulletins saying that they are releasing patches for this, but yeah, still interesting to see how these are actively being developed and are coming out of some fuzzing research being done on 5G modems. Oh, yeah. And it looks like also not all these have been patched. So the only practical solution until they're completely patched, turn off 5G. All right. So we talked about the 23andMe breach. We also talked about how that breach was worse than originally disclosed. So this was kind of the path. They're like, okay, hundreds or thousands of accounts might have been breached from credential stuffing accounts or attacks. And then it went to, okay, we had some sharing settings that allowed these accounts to access a lot more people's data. And then it kind of came out that, okay, there was another sharing set of rules that allowed them to access even more data. So we've now got millions of people involved in this data breach. It's really gotten quite large. And 23andMe has responded in a number of ways. And the most recent way it has responded by making it difficult for people to sue them. So I think they've begun to realize the severity of this data breach and what kind of data now has been released. And that obviously is not good for them. So it seems as though they have modified their terms of service since this data breach to make it so that arbitration is now mandatory. And if you want to opt out of that, then you need to respond to them in writing within a certain amount of time. Within 30 days of the email notification. At legal@23andme.com. Otherwise, you're automatically opted into these new terms of service. However, one legal expert was saying that it would be very difficult to prove that they had given reasonable notice of the opt-out in the new terms. So even though this is a protection measure to reduce their own liability in this ongoing data breach, it's going to be pretty difficult for them to actually be protected by this change, even though it is, some might perceive, a little bit of a sneaky way of immediately limiting their liability while really not adding much to the transparency of the incident response. I always, from our chat, I always thought these DNA people have been selling / daring this stuff for years. Yeah, no. So we've seen a lot of privacy advocates saying that this is a lucrative business for people who have access to the data and can agree to share it with government agencies or scientific agencies or all sorts of people. This data makes a lot of money for them. And there have been crimes that have been solved through relative DNA that has either been opted in or maybe not so much opted in to these databases, where if police have access to running a genetic search and finding relatives of somebody suspected in a crime, this can be a problem for a lot of privacy advocates. So it's really kind of the kind of data we're going to have to think about in the future keeping secure, because the sort of genetic data or information about a person that cannot be changed, a data breach involving your password, that's one thing, but a data breach involving your DNA and your health, that's something entirely different. So not a super transparent move by 23andMe. We'll have to see how this data breach continues to evolve after the data has been breached or been leaked. All right, so we also see some more movement against crypto, against the cryptocurrency exchanges that some of these ransomware gangs use. In this case, this cryptocurrency exchange Bitslato, which I've heard of before, because it's used by criminal groups, was moving a bunch of money where I think either half or over half of the transactions going through it were linked to high risk activities. This is scams, ransomware groups, stuff like that. So being able to legitimize your money or move your money is one of the hardest parts of being a cyber criminal. Once you get access to Bitcoins or some other sort of cryptocurrency, moving it and making it so you can withdraw it is incredibly difficult. So these sorts of middle businesses have popped up to assist by operating in a legal gray area that is increasingly not looking so gray anymore, as these services have been seized, fined, and otherwise regulated because they are essentially money handling businesses and are not registering as such. In particular, this business was violating a bunch of the know your customer regulations by failing to prevent straw buyers from connecting. So basically having people like say they were connecting their accounts, but actually they were registering on behalf of either known criminals or people who are paying them a set fee. So because it was so easy to create an account here or to pay for someone else to create an account for you, this was a favorite transfer point of cryptocurrency by crypto criminals who were accruing a lot of attention. So the Aleph/Black Hat ransomware gang being a particularly notorious example of a customer that will get you shut down, as happened here. All right, we're a little bit over, but let's roll through. So some good news. We have Meta rolling out default end-to-end encryption on Messenger and Facebook. This has been like a year in the making, and they've been testing this out for a while. This hasn't been a complete rollout, as group messaging is still not completely encrypted. However, they are testing this and plan to roll it out soon. Overall, this is based on the Signal protocol, so it's got good bones, at least in terms of the way the encryption is built. So this feature should, probably frustrate law enforcement officials, but also provide customers using Meta products with a little bit of assurance that the company itself does not have direct access to the contents of your messages. I'm sure there's a number of ways they can get around that, and I would not be surprised if they have found out how. However, it is still a positive step in the right direction and gives me a little bit more confidence that Meta has privacy on its roadmap. This one's boring. Lab. And this is the number one I want to talk about this week. So this is a major revelation where apparently Google and Apple were prevented from previously talking about government requests about mobile notifications as a source of intelligence collection. So governments around the world have been requesting users basically mobile push notification data to get information about what apps they were linking their phones to and learn more about someone's associations in a way that is not possible without otherwise seizing someone's phone. So this sort of data leak involves the gateways that mobile providers, in this case, Apple and Google, offer to allow push notifications on Android or iOS devices. And by sitting in the middle and gathering information from those gateways, investigators can learn about what types of apps you have and what types of online identities you've associated with your phone, even if they don't have any other evidence to link the two together. So this sort of endpoint surveillance means that there is kind of a leak in the information on your phone that is going out to a server and then coming right back to give you a notification. So if, for example, you're using Signal Messenger, this sort of notification, a push notification, often contains a summary of the message. So you might be using a secure messenger, but provided that a government is able to access your push notification history, then if it's dictating the majority of your messages through that, they might only have one side of the conversation, but that doesn't really matter so much when they're able to see all of it. So this is definitely something privacy advocates should be aware of. It's something where if you can disable these sorts of notifications on the side of the application itself, it's important to disable it at the source. Turning off push notifications on your phone doesn't necessarily prevent them from being sent. It just prevents them from being displayed. So this is kind of tricky to remediate and something everybody should pay attention to, just in terms of like a surveillance technology we were not previously aware of and has only recently been kind of brought to light by a senator from Oregon. They have time-step metadata, not message data. Okay, so if that's true, then it means that they have information about when certain push notifications were sent and from which applications. I would still say that these sorts of push notifications are sketchy when they contain sensitive information, like not knowing how much of it is going off the device, especially if you have something like Signal that is pushing like sensitive data. Having that pop up, people have mentioned that of course it's a little bit of an issue to have it pop up on your screen and like display the text even like maybe through a lock screen. That could be an issue. But if it's going through a gateway somewhere where any of that information is present, that could also be a problem. But yeah, even if it is just metadata, it still links you to these particular apps and it creates a pattern of use. So if they have a suspicious app with access on one side and then push notifications indicating your access on the other side, it doesn't take a genius to see how that could cause some attribution in terms of you accessing a particular account that otherwise is not tied to you. So is still a privacy risk here, but my previous example of exfiltrating Signal examples for exfiltrating Signal messages, for example, might not actually work. Yeah, they could establish a communication pattern perhaps between two parties and definitely with an application that you were logging into that might otherwise not have any sort of pattern that shows it's you. All right, I think that that's just about it. What's our last one? Oh, yes. And then, of course, we also have a Navy contractor that is working on this beautiful class of ship that potentially had a breach. It's unclear what type of information was impacted. However, as a defense contractor, obviously this breach is getting a little bit of extra scrutiny from the FBI and more. It's, oh yes, and this is a breach that was attributed to Hunters International, but that is believed to be a rebrand of the Hive ransomware gang. And of course, they are denying that, but if they were, then that's exactly what they'd say, right? All right, so that is all we have for today. A good amount of stories. Yeah. I am pleased to see the end-to-end encryption, and there were a couple good bright points in there, along with some things that were
Cody. I do have a question. Bio1 wants to know, where is the list of news articles for today's show? Where can they find that?
So I will post that in the version of this that goes up on the Security Forward channel. So make sure you're subscribed to the Security Forward channel. I'll drop all the links here, but frankly, a lot of our content comes from Bleeping Computer. So I have to say, like, I really enjoy the reporting from Bleeping Computer. I've contributed before. Anytime I find good research, I kind of I tap them first. And I've been quoted there a couple times. So I have to stand behind Bleeping Computer as a great source of this news. Yes. But, because we're experts and because, we read through this beforehand and pick out the stories that are the most interesting this week, I feel like we add a little bit of value to it. But yeah, you'll find a lot of the stuff we talk about over at Bleeping Computer, except, of course, for the stuff on my Mastodon or on my own social media. You can find my social media all over at, I think it's like codykinsey.com or just hack.gay, whichever is easier for you to remember. I bought the shortest domain I could find. So, all right. So, per always, a big shout out to Varonis with their new generative AI capabilities for sponsoring the stream. They are the reason we get to do this every week. And if you want to support the stream, you can check out varonis.com/Cody. That's KODY, and check out the link of the week. It's a great way for you to support the stream. It doesn't cost anything. And of course, they do check to see how many people are visiting. So it lets them know, you guys love the stream and you want it to keep going. And we do appreciate it. So we will see you again next week on Wednesday. And again, I'm going to be going to the C3 conference coming up soon. So you can expect from the 26th of December all the way to the 30th, I will be broadcasting at least one stream from Germany at the C3 conference. So hopefully I will see some of you there. And I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be super fun. So thank you, Killian, for joining us again. It had gotten very lonely for those two streams without you. And we will see everybody next week. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
Goodbye.